Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Trip Talks. This is the show where I interview successful e commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders and ask them questions about their business story and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today I'm really excited to welcome Nils Wessell to the show. Nils is the founder of Brooklyn Butcher Blocks. Brooklyn Butcher Blocks creates fine kitchenware from cutting boards to countertops. And today I want to ask Niels a few questions about his entrepreneurial story and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. So thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks, Niels.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here.
So your business is really unique. I would assume many people, when they think about starting a business, they don't think about like starting a butcher block kind of a business. So can you share a little bit about what really motivated you to start this business?
Yeah. So I there's kind of a few, I guess, backstories that sort of lead to it. What in the moment that had me start this business was that I was actually working for a knife maker, um, and he was sort of people were paying attention to him. He was ending up very fortunately getting press in some like at some big organizations. He was like in Bon Appetit, for example. I think when is when around the time I found him. He's also in the New York Times, and so um, while I was working for him, it was becoming clearly evident that I didn't have the best skills as a metal worker,
Okay.
and and this is sort of like a little bit more of the backstory, but I was taught a lot by my uncle and my now deceased grandfather, just about general woodworking, more like sort of construction based sort of skills.
Hmm.
And a lot of that I took to college and I was majoring in art and sort of used what they had taught me. Um, so I figured, I have some of these sort of basic woodworking skills. What if I sort of um, instead of trying to fully emulate this knife maker, whose name is Joel Bukowitz, and his
Hmm.
company's Cut Brooklyn, just throwing it out there. Um,
Shout
uh,
out.
yes, a shout out. Yeah, uh, I decided to instead of sort of trying to fully emulate him, I decided, what if I sort of took sort of what I know and sort of what is a little bit more of my craft, and what if I tried to hone it in the same way that he honed his? So instead, I saw it sort of like a parallel moving over to the side and then traveling sort of with him in the same direction. Um, and that's sort of like how that started to turn. So I was working on my own in a basement, actually honing my woodworking skills. I made a few things, small pieces of furniture, and also some cutting boards. He was giving me feedback at the time, and there was this show coming up in the summer of 2010, and it's called the Unfancy Food Show. So it was sort of like a play off of the Fancy Food Show that's been going on for decades. And he liked what he saw of my work, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come to the show and show some of your wares, and to see how it goes?" And it went well. It was really positively received. Um, you know, I was drawing some interest from Williams Sonoma, and then a couple other sort of smaller food themed startups. And I just sort of rolled from that. So it was all that basically just sort of showed me like it sort of just like lit a match. I went, okay, like let's lean into this. I sort of
Hmm.
was bouncing around, and now like let's commit a little bit more.
Hmm. So how do you describe yourself? Like, I mean, this is a business, it's an e-commerce business, but
Yeah.
to me, it seems like you are actually making the product every day, right? You're doing the woodworking, you're the craftsman creating the product. You're just using e-commerce as a way to get it to people who may not be living in the vicinity of where you are. Um, how do you see this? Because usually a business or a real business person would want to outsource their product manufacturing so that they're more focusing on the business building, growing the business itself?
Yeah. So, that's always a little like I often find myself in the same boat. I'm not really sure what to introduce myself as. Sort of amongst my friends and everyone, they all sort of know me as, oh, that's Nils, he's a woodworker. Um, and yet, I do, I mean, I'm not saying I'm any, e-commerce expert or anything, but I spend a good deal of my time sort of researching that and figuring out, okay, what can I change here? You know, what apps should I maybe like add on to my Shopify store? What should, the meta tags look like? What social media platform should I be dedicating more time to? And I mean, I'll research it. The great thing in some ways about being a woodworker
Mm,
is that, your brain is, I mean, you certainly have to use it, but there are certain steps where, I mean, if you're used to the certain actions or the muscle memory that you
mm,
have, um, and what you're doing isn't dangerous, if there's a
mm,
step that's not dangerous. I mean, honestly, I turn on YouTube
mm,
on like a series of topics of things I want to learn about and understand better,
mm,
and I just let that roll for 8 hours. So, um, yeah, I think in the past couple of years, um, with the journey starting maybe 5 years ago, but particularly in the past 2 years, I definitely think I'm starting to feel as though, um, saying, like I operate an e-commerce store
mm,
is equally as appropriate as saying, like I'm a woodworker. It's really
mhm.
they're almost butting heads.
But do you think that you create the products because you just love the craft, or do you think that someone else can create the same quality product, or in a certain point you would want to maybe hire an apprentice and start teaching them the craft so that you can free up your time to do other things, or maybe even spend time with your friends and family or something?
Yeah. So certainly, like in the past couple years, this is where some of that change has happened. Um, I'm still, and this is, kind of a common problem with business owners is that they don't know when to sort of let go. Um, and I've had like more help in the past couple of years. Whether it's people sort of coming directly under me to do like certain tasks, some of the stuff that's a little easier to sort of pick up,
Mm-hmm.
or I work in like a little co-op, like that's where my shop is located. There's like 5, 10,000 square feet or something, and there's a bunch of other woodworkers there. I mean, we we have always sort of helped each other out. If one of us has a big job, and for the past couple of years, I've been the one needing a bit more help than others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's definitely being able to step back a little bit. It's hard, but it's also been like definitely a growing experience.
So can you share a little bit about the products that you sell? Like, what are the main products that are that are your best sellers, and
Sure,
what is unique about those products, and why do people buy it from you? Like, what problem is it solving for people?
sure, right. Two, I realize I missed part of your last question. In terms of sort of like the quality, definitely like as I've pulled away, I've had to sort of make sure I'm watching more a little bit to make sure that quality is maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and while I admit I think there's been a slight drop in quality, I think as a response, customer service has more than doubled, tripled, quadrupled. And also stuff does get out faster. To answer sort of the question in terms of like the problem that it solves, um, I think there's a few things. First off, is that people are sort of have a habit of associating cutting boards with just breaking apart frequently,
Mm-hmm.
um, and particularly, I think you know. like Gen Xers and sort of Gen Xers to Boomer generation, they're accustomed to sort of buying something in the store that had been basically churned out and it broken them almost immediately, and there was poor customer service.
Hmm.
Um, I basically am the opposite of that. I offer pretty extensive customer service. I respond to people very quickly. And also, our boards tend to last a bit longer. We have a much lower split rate than sort of what the industry standard is considered. I think industry standard is like 3%. We're like a 1%, split rate. Um, so there's that aspect too, but I think there's also a little bit of a cultural aspect that actually doesn't exactly circle around solving a problem. And I
Hmm.
think it's just a love of well-made goods.
Hmm.
Um, and I saw that a lot with, the knife maker that I've been working with. If your problem is that you need to cut something, I mean, there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of knives you could buy that are $60 and below.
Hmm.
And you could say, well, I want a knife that cuts really well. And that's true. That's going to cost you more money. But even in that problem, the range that exists there, you could talk about maybe $150 knife that was imported from China or Japan that, will do the job. But then, you have American makers who are selling knives for like 6 grand.
Hmm.
So I think there's a little bit of a cultural element there as well.
Cool. So yeah, I think quality definitely, there's a group of people, or in every industry, there are people who are looking for like well-made, really high quality products. Um, so when you started your business, what, um, it is kind of a generic product or industry. Like, how did you go about getting your first customer? Like, how did you know that, okay, I can build this product, but there's people who are willing to buy, and then it motivated you to go and start creating more of these products?
Yeah, I started on the street basically. There
Okay.
was this, it was just a street market. This particular one was called the New Amsterdam market. It closed recently. Oh, actually not recently. Maybe that's like already been 5 years ago. Um, but I would just pack up my bags in like a suitcase you would take to the airport. I'd
Mm,
shove it full of cutting boards.
mm,
I'd take it, go down the way on a subway and go all the way over to Manhattan, haul them back up the stairs, and then after 8 hours I go back home. And but a lot of people would show up at that, and including press.
mm,
This was right around sort of the 2007 to 2011, 12 period, where I think there was a real food scene in New York, and you could argue there always is, but there were a few people that were always highlighted, and it just seems like the New York Times couldn't get enough of. If something involving food happened in Brooklyn, they were covering it.
mm,
Um, and if you could kind of find a little niche in that, press would just pick you up.
mhm,
Um, and also, and obviously that would lead to other sales.
mhm.
Um, and this is true with a few media outlets. They all have some kind of hub here in New York. If they want a sample of something, I mean, I can literally throw it in an Uber and
Mhm.
it's going to get to them in an hour. So I think there's also a bit of sort of convenience that really helped the business sort of thrive. So press and contacts.
And so you didn't have the digital presence at that time. What point did you actually create an e-commerce website, and what motivated you to get into the e-commerce?
I actually had a some web presence, not
Okay.
not much, but I did have a website.
Okay.
Um, and it honestly just seems so natural. You have a business, of course you have a website. It
Okay.
wasn't until a few years later that I talked with someone who was like in their mid 50s, and they were just so impressed like I had a website and I did business through it. And to me, it was just kind of like, no duh.
Hmm.
But now, I feel so old fashioned in a way because I look at these kids, on TikTok or YouTube, like yourself, for example, and like, they're doing business.
Mm,
And like I try to sit there figuring out how to make it work, and
mm.
it's sort of well, anyway. Um, sorry, I went off a little too much there. What was the question again?
When did you transition to e-commerce?
Right. So a friend had put up another website for me, sort of improved the one I had, and I kind of circled back with them a year or two later. It's like, I want to be selling things off of this.
Mm,
Can you make me something? And they
mm,
did.
mm.
Um, and after that point, after they made me that, I just started working on it myself, and that's basically just how it happened. I mean,
And
yeah.
now 100% of your business is e-commerce. No, you're not selling like in trade shows and or
Yeah, I rarely go in person to anything anymore. It's just even pre-pandemic, and
yeah.
I don't. It's a little more difficult now. I think probably with the family, and frankly, I'm a bit more tired. And um, I mean, I love doing it, but
Mm,
most of my business now is, yeah, absolutely like e-commerce. People will either find the website, click and buy there, or they'll want something custom. Usually, it's like a custom countertop.
mm,
And people find me there either through the website or on Google Maps, which has been absolutely like immensely helpful.
mm. I think
Yeah.
one unique thing about your website is that you are offering custom made products. So, when someone adds the item to the cart, you have the fields there, they can enter the dimensions that they want. And I think that's probably the value add also, that the of
Yeah.
the product that you're offering, that is, people can customize what they're looking for. And do you also use like custom wood, or the product itself, is it like something different, or is it um, is it what's usually available in the market?
So, really just about anything, if you want something in the market, basically, you just have to pay enough money for it.
Mm,
Um, Actually, too, in the North America, uh, things are at pretty much in terms of hardwoods. I don't know about softwoods, but in terms of hardwoods, about as much that's taken out of the forest is replanted and is growing. It's a similar rate. Um, so in terms of sort of what I offer, I take custom requests, but the primary things I offer are cherry, maple, and walnut. Um, the three of them just have such a rich history in furniture making, and um, they're just like, it's like those are like the top three woods everyone gets. They just love those woods for
mm,
whatever reason. And there's some importance too. Of course, you have to select, like, some woods would not be suitable for a cutting board.
mm,
Um, there are a few general rules of thumb, like if a nut or a fruit or something grows off of the tree, it's probably pretty good. Um, that's usually what happens in terms of what people. Sometimes people want to select individual pieces of wood effectively. They'll say, I want walnut, but I only want the brown part. I don't like the blondish part. And it's just like, more often than not, I tell people, it's just part of the deal. That's just what I offer.
mm,
Some people probably would accommodate that.
mm,
And sometimes I do, depending on how much someone wants to pay.
mm.
Um, but typically I try to veer away from that because, one, it means more waste, which means perfectly good wood just not being used, which seems kind of weird to me.
Mhm,
Um, and two, it is difficult it's easier to get the client to understand that wood has a range, and that's something they just need to select when they want to get something.
mhm,
So that way, if they don't want a wide range, they'll just pick a wood that doesn't have that. The issue is when they do want a wood that has a wide range, but that's the one thing they don't like about it. They just like the color, or the
mhm,
color it can potentially have. It becomes difficult to communicate in words, um, what someone wants. What someone might say, hey, I only want the light brown, no dark brown, no blonde. Well, what's light brown to me might not be light brown to them.
yeah.
And it can become a very involved and heavy process.
Mhm.
So that's why I set the things up, set things up the way I have.
Now, one thing that's kind of interesting about your business is the pricing of the product itself, I guess, because I think in one day you can only create so many different wooden boards. So
Yeah.
how do you price your product where, it's almost like you're pricing, the hourly rate of your craft, right? And the number of boards you can create in a day, then you also, I guess, you have to buy the wood itself. Can you share a little bit about the thought process around that? And then do you really think that it at the end of the day it really becomes kind of a service-based business where you are, really the profit that you're making is really the hourly rate of your craft? Is that?
So when it comes to the custom work, it's absolutely service. In fact, it's almost been difficult to manage. Like, they're on the same website, but really the customs part and the product part operate totally differently. And for years, they were constantly fighting for time and space in the shop. Like we have a small, like the square footage we have is not that big. So things really have to get completed and then replaced by something else.
Mhm.
Um, and it took a long time to kind of figure that out. So I would definitely say the custom part that's a service business. It's
Mm.
so much a service business. And now that they are separated better, there's some huge benefits to it. Certainly, like right now the service business seems to be up, and the product business is down a little bit. Now
Mm.
that we're kind of past. I mean, we're not fully past COVID, but
Mm.
I think the worst of it is behind us.
Yeah.
Um, the product part, usually nowadays we really try to do those in bulk. We try to sit down, focus, and try to do them in bulk. So that way, we don't work it out so much as hour. I mean, technically we do, but like we really try to think about it in terms of weeks.
Mm.
And because if you focus too much on the hourly, it like I initially tried to do that, and it was just too confusing between thinking about the other tasks that need to happen around the shop that help support the product, the product pieces.
Mm.
So we just look at it in terms of weeks. Usually the wood can be about, 20, I want to say 20, 25% of the cost, depending. Like right now, things used to be a little easier, obviously, like prior to inflation. But and I had a system worked in to account for wholesale.
Mm.
Right now, I mean, wholesale orders, um, basically there's no profit to be made in it right now.
Mm.
Um, so the remainder of that basically, ends up with rent and labor and yeah.
So which channels are you selling and which channels work the best for you? I know you have a website. Are you also selling on like Amazon, Etsy, other places?
Yeah. So our website is number one by far, leagues and bounds. Um, After that, Amazon, but it's really iffy. Um, it's difficult for us to work sort of by the schedule they want. And so, maybe I'm getting like 12 orders there a year or
Okay.
something. 12, 20, I don't know, but it's not much. And then on Etsy, oh, it's almost like once in a blue moon or something.
Okay.
It's very minor. These have, in those two channels, this is like I was talking about before, am I doing, woodworking and e-commerce? Well, the e-commerce side means like I really want to start figuring out how to build out a system for something like Amazon and or Etsy,
Mhm.
um, and try to compete in those spaces more.
So I guess, I mean, with a product like this, it's really about, when the customer is purchasing, like you almost have to really communicate the value proposition of your board because I'm sure there's so many other boards out there that, you know, people who are just looking for a wooden board, like they um, wouldn't want to go for a higher price point, I guess. So how do you actually do that? How do you attract people to your website, or how do you communicate that value proposition so that the people who are looking for that high quality product actually come to your website and buy it?
Yeah, I think, it's a little bit of, I think in some ways the pricing also serves as a form of elimination. It's like someone who doesn't want to spend $100 on the cutting board, well, they're not even looking around. I think
Hmm.
most of the people who are looking at me, um, like the only reason they would ever click a link to find me is because they weren't intimidated too much by the price.
Hmm.
So in some respects, it's really, I think, telling the story. I think actually showing my face, the first thing you see when you go to the homepage, I think that
Hmm.
helps. And I think the fact that I'm at a market, I think even that helps because it's kind of like people are used to doing that. It's almost like they're sort of virtually entering like a market in a way.
Hmm.
And I think too, I think my story, well, maybe I already mentioned it, but if I didn't, the story helps.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
plus two, I mean, I think I do a good job articulating sort of the benefits of the products that we have. Um, like for example, like with the end grain board, there are a few um, minor things that we do that I think are big bonuses. So one of them is that the particular pattern we make,
Hmm.
one, I think it looks kind of aesthetic. Two, it's not actually too showy, which I think that reserved quality actually like appeals to people.
Hmm.
Um, and lastly, it's structural. So basically, if you go to brooklynbutcherblocks.com and you look at our end grain cutting boards, you'll notice they have a pattern that simulates a brick wall,
Hmm.
and that's actually done so that you have sort of one brick holding two more bricks together, right? And so as opposed to doing like a checkerboard pattern where a glue line is meeting at a specific point, it is you know theoretically assumed that that point is going to be weaker than like doing like a staggered pattern.
Hmm.
um, and then lastly, what is it? I think it was Test Kitchen on YouTube actually maybe debunked this, but the history has been that with the end grain board, your wood fibers are pointing upwards. So when you're cutting down in between the wood fibers,
Hmm.
and so as a result, your knife stays sharper longer,
Hmm.
um, and the wood fibers actually heal back up a little bit.
Okay.
And then, right, that's less of an area for bacteria to reside, and et cetera, et cetera. And that actually is true across the board, pardon the pun, versus
Hmm.
plastic.
Okay.
Plastic actually can really harbor bacteria in a way that wood, particularly end grain, can't. And I suspect too, like with the test kitchens, well, the test that they performed, um, I would be curious if they would get the same results if they were using a knife that was more in the 200, 300, $500 range. Just because those knives are usually made so sharp that they're literally cutting at a cellular level.
Okay.
So um, I don't know. I'd like to see that test done again with some different cutting equipment.
Interesting. So I think the one interesting thing about your business may be that, because you're catering to more of a high-end client, maybe there's an opportunity for you to uh, sell another product to them, right? So do you have like, so cutting board is your main product. Do you have other products that you try to upsell to them after they have purchased this product and make it more of a, repeat purchase kind of a thing?
Yeah, that has been really tricky. The best repeat business so far has been people buying more gifts, and that's actually been, you know, for compared to other businesses that are structured, of course, to have repeat customers. And I'm not doing as well as they are for
Hmm.
repeat customers,
Hmm.
but for what I do, I actually have a pretty good repeat customer rate, I think. Um, but the number one thing has been care products. I mean, all these cutting boards, they need oil, they need wax. And so people come back for that. I also have like an annual subscription for people. So that's helped. Um, in terms of selling like other wood products, it's been really tricky because of the name itself, Brooklyn Butcher Blocks. It tells you, where it is and what it is.
Hmm.
People aren't looking for a chair. Like I
Hmm.
tried selling some chairs and I tried selling some other things,
Hmm.
and I got one or two sales over the course of a few years, but it's just that has not been the thing to really grab people. What has worked better
Mm,
um, has been uh, even just directing people to my other website. So I think on the upper right hand corner, I say there's like custom furniture and something,
mhm,
and that redirects you to nilswalkerdesigns.com, and people can scroll through there. And I've gotten a little bit more. Um, I've gotten people reach out a little bit more over that. Um, and then the last thing that I've really been trying to, well, one thing that I've currently been trying to make work has been offering kitchen islands.
mm,
And I developed that this last summer. I admit the website in that area of the website it needs more work, but because I was expecting to still though get like a bite or something,
mm,
and nothing's really happened there. So I think the issue there's right now it's set up like it's a custom modular um, sort of click and buy situation. And I think that's almost too complicated. I think I just need to make a small kitchen island that you can just click buy and it's done. You don't
mm,
select anything. It just is
mhm.
what it is. So I'm actually working on that now. And then in the future, what I have planned is I'm actually working on making a variety of finishes for like care products for other items. Like in particular, I'm working on it's a soap and then a particular oil for some cast iron products.
Interesting. Um, in terms of marketing, how like do you do paid advertising? Do you do email marketing? Is most of your traffic really organic, search engine optimization? Is it social media? Can you share a little bit about, what kind of, how do you attract people to your website?
Yeah, first off, it's organic. That's number one. Usually from links where we've just been featured. New York Times, Serious Eats. There's a list there. So like organic, and then Instagram has been pretty decent for me. I admit that, again, this is another arena where I need to focus more on. And I'd love to sort of breach more into sort of YouTube and TikTok. And um, I would say those are like the primary ones. In terms of paid advertising, I took a class on that actually in 2020 to try to better understand it. And I tried a few things, and I was getting a little bit of attention, some clicks, but not sales. And I think I have like a hypothesis as to what wasn't working, and the short version is I think I'm just a little too niche compared to other competitors, and I'm too pricey. It's
Mm,
like those are two cons, and I think that's one too many at least.
mm.
But the guy who actually did the class, I think I'm gonna reach out to him sometime soon. I'd like to get their feedback on it. Um, so yeah, that's sort of where I am right now. Paid advertising, I'm more interested in doing organic on TikTok and Instagram, I guess.
From an e-commerce perspective, I think one interesting facet of e-commerce is really the shipping and fulfillment aspect. Of course, as a wooden board, I'm assuming that it has a decent amount of weight. Do you charge customers for shipping? Do you offer free shipping? How do you manage that?
So I charge customer shipping, but I also do offer sort of like, flash free shipping opportunities, for customers. Um, it's definitely a an issue. It's also like it's yeah, it's an issue because it's heavy, but it's also the size relative to the quantity we're selling in makes it difficult to go to a third party logistics company,
Mhm.
which have really wanted to do. And but it's like, the amount of product I'd have to store, like how much space that would take up, it would just it just makes more sense to do it in house. And that was my thinking for a few years. Instead, what I did recently, sort of over the term of the pandemic, is I sort of set up my own third-party logistics company. So I found
Okay.
someone that I trusted, and I talked with them. I said, "Hey, can I sell you, our product, all that stuff? Can I ship that to you in bulk, and then give you orders to fulfill?
Hmm.
And I'll pay you for your time doing that."
Hmm.
And that worked out great. And it also was like a great like creative problem solving opportunity to take on because it was like it was getting really hard for us to do it in the shop. It didn't make sense to do it with a proper third party logistics company. Well, well, I just paused and thought, what does a third party logistics company really do? I mean,
Hmm.
if we're going to be such a small part of that puzzle of theirs, it's
Hmm.
like any person could do this out of their garage.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, just do that.
I think there's probably a need for that. I think there's a lot of small business owners, they would much rather just hand over this part of the business to someone else, which is not a big company, so that they're still getting the attention, and they can focus on doing what they really do best.
Yeah, it's like that was I mean, it was just the it's like that's the worst part. It's like one of the worst tasks. Like everyone in their lives must have put a box together at some point. If you celebrate any holiday involving gift giving, like you've put a box together. Anyone can do it. So, um, and again, like you don't necessarily like need to use a proper third party logistics company, right? It's like that's kind of what I just sort of demonstrate. It's like I think people sometimes always think, I have to go to what's one of the blue big ones? It's not Shopify. What's it? Shipbob or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, don't you know like a family member or someone who's in high school, slip a little more money. I mean, yeah, maybe it's a little more expensive than you like to pay, but it gives them something to do. It's someone you can trust. It's someone that you can get on the phone. You can set up your own system with them. Um, and the flip side too is that a giant company like ShipBob, if you have some just like little technical errors when you're printing your shipping labels and you don't feel like fixing it, you can literally just change it just by writing something down, right? Instead of having to go through your whole system, find out what you need to change. You can just do it manually, right? And you can still hand it over to
Yeah.
your relative. In some ways, it's way easier than dealing with something like ShipBob, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the times, like these big 3PL companies I think there's more mistakes made, there's less quality control, and a lot of the times businesses regret working with them.
Yeah, Reddit doesn't have many favorable reviews of a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Um,
important to do. I mean, like a relative isn't going to do it perfectly either, obviously, or a friend or whomever. But so in part of that, you have to accept that just handing it over, right? It's like you have to work the cost of that error into your cost. You're not charging enough.
yeah, yeah. Now, one thing that you mentioned is the strength of your business is customer service. Can you share like what kind of customer service issues that you usually get, and like why is that a strength for your business?
So the first thing is I'm usually responding like at the longest time period that I'm having someone wait is like 24 hours, and that's rare.
Hmm.
Usually I'm responding easily within 12, mostly within 3. Um, the other thing too is um, I I don't give any guarantees. Um, I don't publicly give out any guarantees. That's what I'll say because I'm a little worried how that might influence people to buy and
Hmm.
sort of and also the degree to which people feel like caring for their board recklessly, I guess. I'm
Hmm.
a little nervous about that. But low key, they do. They basically have, like a 5 to lifetime guarantee. What I tell clients is that, and customers is that everything is done under review. So really, I just want to see some photos and check out what's going on and hear their story. Um, and there's only been 2 instances with both the products and with the custom stuff
Hmm.
where I haven't made good in some way. Either
Hmm.
A, they got a replacement, they got their money back,
Hmm.
um, everyone else. There's only two instances in the past 12 years or 13 years.
Hmm.
And that is one person literally just didn't get back to me
Hmm.
after they wrote me and they were sort of upset because their cutting board didn't look like butterflies.
Hmm.
I don't even know what that means.
Hmm.
But whatever, make it right. They just never got back to me. Another client, it was a custom order, and basically they got one of the dimensions wrong, but we had agreed multiple times what the dimensions were, and then they paid for an invoice that clearly stated the dimensions, and they kind of came back and said, yeah, but in the first email I said this, and it's like, that's the first email. We have another 5 instances plus you paying the invoice, which is like the most definitive thing ever.
Hmm.
Like, we're not taking back a 2 by 8 foot 2 inch thick piece of wood, cutting it up, remilling it, gluing back, bringing it back for free. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, sorry. So otherwise, everyone else I've made good on.
What does your team look like right now?
What does my team look like?
Yeah, is it just you, or are there other people in your business also?
It's I guess it's primarily me in the Brooklyn shop.
Okay.
I have people who come in, and I have once upon a time I had tried bringing people in full time, um, and I had difficulty with that. Just space wise, sort of getting and also to for someone else to be really at their best was difficult because the work can be kind of grueling if you're doing like the same task for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So usually you have people now 4 to 6 hours. They might show up 3 days a week,
Mm.
but I might have three people who do that. So that's actually pretty good overall in terms of filling out that week. Then other sort of my like team members are people just who also rent from the shop I'm in, um, and a lot of them have various backgrounds. Like a lot of them do cabinetry. One of the guys, is a little bit of a welder, but he'll hop on or give me a hand, or I might give him specs to make something at. Um, So the team is quite varied. It's not like an office. You have people who come in at 9, they clock out at 5. It's definitely more flexible.
Now, in every entrepreneur's journey, there's always, some mistakes made, failures, lessons learned. In your entrepreneurship journey, I mean, I can see it from your face. uh, can you share like one or two big mistakes that you made that you think you might have done without, and what can other entrepreneurs learn from it?
Yeah, you're it's fortunate that you put a number on that, otherwise we'd be here for 12 hours. Um, man, mistakes. It's I think one of the biggest ones was not finding help sooner,
Hmm.
trying to keep on shipping in the shop. I think that was like, wish I'd done that ages ago. Um, Figuring out this rotational method of people coming in to help, or just using, my network. Um, I should have done that years ago. I think not going full time sooner. All right, I'm already giving too many. I've already given three. But yeah, I mean, all those definitely qualify.
Cool. So now I'm going to move on to our rapid fire round. And in this round, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions and you have to answer them maybe in 1 word or 2 word. Um, so yeah, really quickly. One book recommendation for entrepreneurs or business professionals.
I'm going to recommend Poor Charlie's Almanack from
Okay,
Charlie Munger,
Charlie Munger, yeah.
mostly for his, the methods. I forget the proper, whatever he calls them, but the different sort of thought methods he uses for decision making, basically. And
Men,
that's like imperative for people. Yeah,
yeah, mental models.
mental
And
models. That's it.
yeah, and Charlie Munger is still sharp, really sharp. I mean, at this age, plus he's funny. So
Yeah, and brief.
Yeah, yeah. An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about.
Oh, um, boy. I think right now I'm pretty I'm I'm I feel pretty good about the metaverse. I think
Okay.
it's interesting that this the past 6 months or something has become this like huge like discussion, and I don't think most people know what it is, and it frankly doesn't even know quite what it is yet. But I think people who are selling that one short, I don't think they're on the right side of history.
Okay. I mean, to be honest, I haven't seen it. I don't know what it is. Maybe I should,
I
but
mean, I mean, do you play video games, or have
not
you ever in your life? No.
not really.
So,
Maybe I'm weird.
did you? All right, have you seen Grand Theft Auto?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what I associate the metaverse being like a year ago,
Hmm.
before it kind of like popped, like that was, and basically it's like an online, how I describe it, it's an online space where you're each playing sort of as your little character,
Okay.
but you're not necessarily gaming. You're also just sort of hanging out. Um, and you can buy like, oh, if you're renting a space in the metaverse, you can have a little apartment. You could potentially in the future, I see, buy like, um, virtual furniture for your virtual apartment, and people already buy virtual clothing for their little, avatars or whatever. But I think there's a real potential there. Like the way I look at it is in the next 20 years, and I'm not counting myself out, but I also have to be realistic that to some degree, and at some certain point, I'm probably, if I'm not already, in competition with Amazon. And
Hmm.
if I'm a betting man, if I'm not me and I'm a betting man, I mean, the bet is on Amazon.
Hmm.
So I look at it. So when I see the metaverse, I think here is a great new opportunity for small businesses to move into as Amazon takes over sort of like the web browser space,
Hmm.
that area of click and buy, and then smaller businesses move over to the metaverse and they start growing there. Um, and because too, like where are malls today? I mean, most of them are. Sorry, this is supposed to be quick fire.
No, no, go ahead.
Okay.
It's good
Well,
discussion.
where are malls going to? I mean, at best, they're becoming like mini theme parks.
Hmm.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm not a teenager. I don't have a teenager. My kid's like 1.5. But I sometimes sit around and wonder, like, what the hell do teenagers do with their damn time? That's
Hmm.
what I did. I went to the mall. They can't go to the mall. So I just think, well, you can go online and go to basically what is a virtual mall.
Hmm.
What do you do? What did we do when we went to malls? We'd spend money. We'd
Hmm.
buy music. We'd buy posters. We'd put those on our effing walls. Like, I don't know. I don't see how teenagers are gonna stop doing those core things in commerce that are sort of connected to self-expression, and I don't know where else they're gonna do it together, like
Mhm.
socially, but a place like the metaverse.
I'm going to try it out or check it out. A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip.
Um, oh, what is it called Boomerang for Gmail,
Okay.
and Google Chrome. Having timed emails, like deciding when those can be released, are great. And it's really changed my life.
A startup or business in e-commerce, retail, or tech that you think is currently doing great things.
Um, yeah, we're doing great things.
Any other products that, or from a
Yeah,
company that you buy that you like?
I again tied to sort of like the metaverse. I wonder how Facebook is going to do with the metaverse in particular their 3D headset. What is that, Oculus or something?
Hmm.
Um, you know. if people can get into that just enough, that's a really that item is a good it's a good price, um, for what it does, and yet it's also like it hits that sort of magic online pricing range for an item. Like usually like 100 to 200 range is like perfect for e-commerce. But what they're doing, of course, they have like a very specific product. And well, yeah, I guess just have to see where that goes.
Final question. Best business advice that you ever received or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Um, I would get very involved, understanding compound interest in investing, and I would jump into retirement as soon as possible, even if you're telling yourself, I'm broke, I'm not making any money yet, yada, yada. Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. The only thing you're going to do is lower your tax bill at the end of the day. You
Hmm.
know, look up the FIRE movement. You don't have to prescribe to the FIRE movement, which stands for was it the RE is retire early and financially independent, retire early, but you can still pick up on those ideas of how to save money and implement them and get your compound interest in your investments rolling. Just dump in the S&P 500. You don't know anything about it, just do that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So thank you so much, Nils. Those were all the questions that I had. If people want to buy your product, where can they go and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find us at brooklynbutcherblocks.com, and we have my email listed right there. And you can also find us on nilswalkerdesigns.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Niels, for joining us today at Trep Talks, for sharing your story, for sharing, the details, strategies, and tactics that you use to grow your business. So really appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining us today at Trep Talks.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Thank you.